feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
Have you ever wondered how a land, revered as holy by many, became a battleground for two nations? Picture this. The year is 1948. The United Nations, in a controversial decision, partitions British Palestine into two distinct states. One Jewish, the other Arab. This decision plants the seeds of a conflict that would span generations. In the heart of the Middle East, a new nation is born, Israel. Its birth, however, is anything but peaceful. No sooner is the Declaration of Independence made than the surrounding Arab nations declare war. The Arab-Israeli War, as it comes to be known, is the first bloody chapter in a narrative of enduring conflict. This was the genesis, a land divided, a nation born, and a conflict ignited. A conflict that would ripple across decades, shaping the geopolitics of not just the Middle East, but the entire world. The birth of a new nation, Israel, marked the beginning of decades of strife and conflict. As the conflict escalated, new players entered the fray. One such player was Hamas, a Palestinian Sunni Islamic fundamentalist organization that emerged in the late 20th century. The birth of Hamas can be traced back to the first Intifada, or uprising, against Israeli occupation in the late 1980s. It was initially an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, a transnational Sunni Islamist organization founded in Egypt. Hamas was different from other Palestinian factions. It combined political and military methods to resist Israeli occupation. The organization's charter called for the establishment of an Islamic state in Palestine, and it rejected any compromise with Israel. Hamas quickly became infamous for its use of suicide bombings, rocket attacks, and other forms of violence against Israeli civilians and military personnel. Hamas's rise to power was marked by a series of events that shook the region. The organization's popularity skyrocketed in the aftermath of the Second Intifada in the early 2000s. The Palestinian people, frustrated with the corruption and inefficiency of the Palestine Liberation Organization, began to see Hamas as a viable alternative. This led to Hamas's victory in the 2006 Palestinian legislative elections, a result that shocked the world and further escalated the Israel-Palestine conflict. However, the rise of Hamas was not without its challenges. The organization faced intense international criticism and isolation due to its violent methods and refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist. Despite this, Hamas continued to maintain a significant influence over the Palestinian territories, particularly in the Gaza Strip, where it established a de facto government. Hamas's role in the Israel-Palestine conflict is a complex one. On one hand, it is seen as a symbol of resistance against Israeli occupation. On the other, it is viewed as a terrorist organization that uses violence and extremism to achieve its goals. Regardless of these contrasting perspectives, one thing is clear. The entry of Hamas into the conflict scene added a new, volatile dimension to the Israel-Palestine dispute. But what if this regional conflict spiraled into a global one? Imagine a chessboard, the Middle East as the board, and each nation a piece. As tensions rise between Israel and Palestine, the other pieces on the board begin to shift. The USA, a key player in this geopolitical game, continues to stand by Israel. This allegiance, however, could potentially draw in other global powers, turning a regional conflict into an international showdown. Let's ponder on the possible implications. Suppose Middle Eastern countries, driven by religious, political, or economic interests, decide to intervene. This could dramatically escalate the conflict, leading to more chaos, more bloodshed, and an even more complex political landscape. But what about the global powers, the kings and queens of our chessboard? China and Russia, both with vested interests in the Middle East, could decide to join the fray. Their involvement could come from a desire to challenge the USA's influence or to protect their own interests in the region. Now picture China, Russia and the USA, three of the world's most powerful nations, embroiled in a conflict sparked by a regional dispute. The stakes are high, the consequences dire. We could potentially see an economic fallout, with global markets reacting nervously to the uncertainty. An arms race could ensue, straining international relations and testing the limits of diplomacy. And yet, it's not just about the economic and political implications. At the heart of it all is the human cost. The people of Israel and Palestine, already bearing the brunt of a long-standing conflict, would suffer even more. The casualties would not just be counted in numbers, but in lost homes, shattered families, and broken dreams. In this grand game of chess, there are no winners, only survivors. The Israel-Palestine conflict, once a regional issue, now has the potential to become a global crisis. It's a stark reminder of how interconnected our world is and how a spark in one corner can ignite a fire across the globe. The Israel-Palestine conflict is not just a regional issue anymore, it's a potential trigger for a global war. So where do we go from here? Is peace a distant dream? It might seem so, considering the numerous failed peace attempts and treaties that have preceded us. From the Oslo Accords to the Camp David summit, history is laden with well-intentioned but ultimately unsuccessful endeavors to broker peace. The current status of the conflict is no less complex. The key challenges to achieving a lasting peace are manifold. On one hand, there's the question of land, of borders, of settlements. On the other, there's the issue of recognition, of statehood, of sovereignty. And let's not forget the elephant in the room, mutual trust, or rather, the lack of it. There's no denying that the path ahead is steep and treacherous, littered with diplomatic landmines and historical grievances. Yet we must not lose sight of the ultimate goal, a peaceful resolution. The road to peace is fraught with hurdles, but hope, as they say, is the last thing ever lost. In the midst of this chaos, one thing remains clear. The Israel-Palestine conflict, with its deeply rooted history and the emergence of new players like Hamas, is a complex and multi-layered issue. It's not just a local dispute, but a grand chess game on the international arena where superpowers like the United States, Russia and China could potentially be drawn into. The formation of Israel, the ongoing war, and the potential involvement of other Middle Eastern countries, all these factors contribute to a situation that is as unpredictable as it is volatile. The stakes are high and the ramifications could be far-reaching, impacting not just the region but the world at large. But it's crucial to remember, amidst this chaos, the human lives that are affected. History, in all its complexity, is ultimately about people and their stories. Remember to subscribe to Creative Undercover for more insightful content. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign.